This is so exciting for me because I've just always believed that the entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs are literally creating the future that we're living in. And yet community of faiths have never been a part of that conversation. And this idea of Innové is like one of the first times where a faith community is saying, we're going to be a part of the conversation that is creating the world we're going to be living in, or solving some of the problems of the world that we're going to be living in. And so just really, really excited to be here. My name is Ryan Skoog. When I was 18, I went to go live in Sweden, like most people do, in Minnesota. And I tried to learn the colloquial Swedish, and when they have an expression when you get shocked, you go, "Skärde barn." And so one time I decided to do this on a bus, where we were on a bus and somebody came out and, the bus had to stop and everyone's like shaking around. I'm like, "Skärde barn." And my Swedish friend said, "Sit down." And so I sit down and I'm like, "What?" I just said, it's weird, but then when they get shocked, they say "lovely children," which, who knows, they're Swedish. And I said, "I just said lovely children." And she said, No, you didn't. You said kill the kids. I said "skärde barn," not "skärde barn." And so "skärde barn" is like knife the children. So good. Words matter. Words matter. And the idea is I had a right idea-ish, right? And so something I always talk about, this is, if you can't see, there's a little bit of a cord that connects to the airplane, to the cyclist here. And so there's part of that picture is the idea is that sort of the right idea, but maybe you should have thought about it a little bit more. And one of the talks I love to give is the idea about how ideas need to be beat up. And this is what's called the Edsel. This car was created by a group of people who didn't talk to a single customer ever. They just decided to make a car for designers at the time. And this is the first car that was ever built without ever consulting with a customer. And it lost $2 billion. It totally bombed. So here's another idea, though. Just a little simple equation. Some people know this, right? Okay, oh yeah. I was like, wow, I'm pretty impressed. Yeah! Probably one of the first times in my life I've ever shown a math equation. People go, yes! I love it. So anyways, that's the equation for PageRank, and that's made over $32 billion for Google. So the idea does matter, but it didn't just start out like that. And so most ideas start off like this, where there's something good in there, right? Something, but you got to start kind of grabbing a hold of it a little bit more, and then it can look like this when you start arranging it properly. And that's kind of the visual I wanted to share, is that this is where ideas start, but there's this idea of getting beat up. And that's what I just call them, is ideas get beat up, where you start something, but it might not be, most of the time it's not. It's most of that airplane with the string around it or something like that. And so my story is I started a company called Fly for Good. And we do discounted humanitarian airfare for, there's 13 airlines that offer humanitarian discounts for people traveling for humanitarian purpose. They're not on every flight or every route every season, but when they're there, they're saved a couple $100s. And so I was a youth pastor doing mission trips and connected to the airfare through family and through some other things, and thought we should create this company. And so it's been really exciting to do that. It started as a marketing paper, and I showed it to turn into a business plan, shared it with some people, and they beat the thing up. I mean, literally to the point where I was almost crying the first time because this is my idea, and they just tore it apart. And finally, something came out, and that was workable, that people could work, investors could think about, and we could put it all together. And then it just took working at it. And I know some people say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results, to which I say, what about cutting down trees? Because you're doing the same thing over and over again, and sometimes the tree comes down. So that balance of when do we change and when do we just keep hammering at it is that balance that we have to work at as an entrepreneur. And that's something that's just this iterative process that sometimes is gut-worthy and other times just takes everything out of you. But I'm just kind of sharing a little bit of what I've gone through. Recently, we just launched crowdfunding for airfare. So this is the first time you can crowdfund and then get a tax receipt. And then whether it's for adoption, people wanting to get their community to help them buy a plane ticket to go adopt a baby, or some type of volunteer trip or mission trip. So that's something really new. We just launched it 2 weeks ago. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll see. And then we started another company called Volunteer Card, which is travel insurance, discounts onto a card for traveling volunteers. So it's an adjacent, so real similar to airfare, but just, hey, what else do the people that we're serving need? And created that. And that's just been, we were really, really blessed with that. It's grown almost doubled every year, actually, that we started it. And then we started trying to do the idea of social entrepreneurship and experimenting with what does it really mean in social entrepreneurship. And in that, we found out that if you come out and say, if you buy our product, we're going to do this good, there's a huge problem with that sentence. We're going to do this good. And a lot of companies get this wrong, where they say, you buy our products and we will do this good. We will give to this. We will give to that, or whatever it is, some education or whatnot. But if you miss the fact that social entrepreneurship is letting the customer do something good by buying your product, and when you make that when you translate that world so they feel like they're doing the good versus they're buying your product and you are doing something good, that is a key difference in social entrepreneurship. So we started out going, if you buy a ticket, we're going to help these people here with our proceeds or profits. And I hear it all the time, and I get frustrated with companies like, part of the proceeds or part of the profits. I'm like, you're missing an opportunity here. Because what you could do is give the customer the sense that they are the ones making the difference. And that's where social entrepreneurship has such a power. And so when we switched to, when you buy a card, it gets one hot meal for a refugee. Then the person who buys the card feels like they got the meal for the refugee, not that this company did it. Do you see that distinction? And that's a huge, huge lesson that we learned, and it really increased our sales on the for-profit side. It's still a for-profit company, but it increased the sales, and it allowed us to more tangibly and specifically help people. And so that's just 3 quick things. This is just some lessons from the road, and some of these will be random, but hopefully I can grab something that helps somebody in the room with that. So tangible, attached to purpose, and specific. If you're on the side of doing the for-profit social entrepreneurship, you want to make it so they feel like they're the ones doing the good, that the customer is doing it. And that's the bottom line. If you can get that sense, because then, in essence, you're selling a good feeling, as well as being able to do something good for the world. So that's just a quick, throw that, in a parenthetical kind of thought. And so I'm going to actually veer a little bit from the talk that I was going to give because of some things I heard when we had our forum up here, and some of the things I heard. And that's that, and this just kind of hit me as we were talking, was that not only do ideas get beat up, but the entrepreneurs get beat up in the process of growing something. And that's just the reality, is that you don't just have to have a good gut to take somebody beating your idea up. Entrepreneurs, you're going to get beat up if you try to start anything in this world. That iterative process, that birthing, if you want to know, process of bringing something about that does not exist, that is going to involve pain. It's going to involve late nights. It's going to involve rejection. It's going to involve even some existential core who am I questions. It's going to involve lots of, for my wife and I to start Fly for Good, we dumped out every single penny of our retirement savings that we had saved for our whole life. And it was let's really do it, Harry. Let's see if we can do this. And that moment creates this intensity of you better believe I'm going to stay up till 1:30 tonight trying to make sure this thing works, because my entire retirement savings is thrown into this, and the entrepreneur gets beat up. And I used to always think it was just ideas, but I was thinking through it. I'm like, no, it doesn't just take a great idea. It takes a person or a team who are willing to get beat up for that idea. And are you willing? That's the gut check time. And it's one of these things to talk about, it's to hear someone say, man, a marathon is really tough to run. And you can cognitively assent to that. I believe running a marathon is tough. But until you get to that mile 20, and your legs feel like they want to fall off, your lungs are bursting out of your chest, and you're kind of dizzy because you can't see because you're kind of in pain and every step hurts, then you really know that running a marathon is a difficult experience. And that's the difference, I think, between an entrepreneur and somebody who likes entrepreneurship is the person who's willing to get beat up to see that thing happen in this world. And the thing is if we're social entrepreneurs, it's worth it. We must. We've got to. There's got to be people willing to get beat up, to birth something new on this world. And so I just want to throw that as a bit of an encouragement, a bit of a veer in the sense of saying, it's not just the idea that gets beat up, it's you. And are you willing to? And hang on to that. A lot of people get excited in social entrepreneurship about like Tom's shoes. That was his 5th company. It was a man who was willing to get beat up and try things. And so I just want to keep encouraging you that if you feel like you're getting beat up, good, because that's what entrepreneurship is. That's just an affirmation of that you are trying to start something that doesn't exist. And it's existential. It comes to the core of who you are, of like, not just is my idea wrong, it's am I wrong? And I've been there so many times, and I somehow like to jump into it again. I'm going to try and start a co-working space in Chicago. Might fail. We'll see. I'm batting about 50-50. About half the things that start really fail. Gloriously fail, but they fail. And the idea is, are you willing to still pick yourself up off of a failure and say, you know what, I'm going to try again. It wasn't me that was wrong. Maybe the idea needed to beat up, but I'm going to keep trying. And that type of courage is something that I believe it's a core belief. And if you're a person of faith and you're doing a social good, that's even greater. The world is not only the world is conspiring to help you, but all of heaven is conspiring to help you see that good happen. So that's just a quick, forget the idea buckets. I was going to talk about a little bit of way to like kind of filter some ideas out. But I would rather just talk about how in the gut check, the moments, of who you are, push through the pain and you will see what happens to create something new that didn't exist, that helps people. It's an incredible, incredible thing. So my story on the nonprofit side was that some buddies of mine in college basically had a crazy idea, dude, let's bike across the country, raise money for some humanitarian missionary projects. It was a late night dorm dream, but we thought, let's actually try it. And so we did it, and I was kind of the boring guy that helped organize while they got to actually do the first ride, which I'm still jealous about. Biked from Portland to New York, and it worked. And we raised like $16,000, to which a college student, it could have been $1 million for us. We're like, whoa, this thing worked. And then we tried it again, and then a guy named Don Miller, who wrote a book called Blue Like Jazz, he went on one of our tours, he wrote about it in his next memoir, that became a New York Times bestseller. Then people from all over the country started calling us, saying, hey, can we do these trips? And that's when I actually stepped out of my full-time job to go get an MBA at St. Thomas in entrepreneurship to kind of learn how to run things, because I figured, man, I don't even know how to run this stuff, so I better learn how to do this. And it's really been just this kind of a crazy adventure now. And there's people, now there's tours going, people running, biking, hiking all over the country. And we've raised millions of dollars now for clean water in Africa and for fighting human trafficking and for helping Burmese refugees. And the idea was just to keep starting out and seeing where this could go and seeing if there's anybody that would be interested in this. And it started, there's teams now that have just finished this past summer. We had people now that are running. Someone came and said, hey, we want to run, not just bike. And we're like, okay, that's great. And they ran across the state doing a marathon a day for 9 days. And we thought, that's pretty insane. I don't think anyone else can do this, until we had another team decided they wanted to do it. And this year, like 8 people did it. And you split it up. So you do like 5 miles, and then you wait for 20 minutes and 5 miles. It really helps the joints. So anyways, and we've got teams that are hiking 5 mountains in 5 days, and we stumbled upon something that's actually better than just biking. We stumbled upon something called experiential giving, where people are physically engaging themselves in their giving. And I wanted to just kind of throw about the idea that you have right now. There's other ideas that are waiting on the other side of you getting one of them working. And these ideas not only need to be beat up, they need to be expanded. And so if you're willing to be beat up a little bit for the first one, start letting the next one might happen a lot easier. And so we've got now with Venture, there's This past year, over $1 million came through venture. We have chapters in different states, and there's staff here, and there's just some incredible things that have happened as more and more people have gone on them. In fact, some people have tattooed their logos on their, like they really get excited about this. They tattooed our logo on their body, and I don't have the heart to tell them that we're changing our logo, but what do you do, right? So now he's vintage, and so, I don't know. And then right next to him, sorry, the picture wasn't right, but right next to him is the CEO of a publicly traded company. And so we've got the Tattoo Boy and publicly traded company joining together, sacrificing, and this is a bike from Joplin to Atlanta, and then up on a stage in a thing called Catalyst, and that was to raise money for the victims of the Joplin tornado. And the idea of it physically engaging in your giving has just been powerful. We thought maybe this will work in other ways, and we started doing water walks where people will take empty jerry cans, walk 2 miles, fill it up with water, walk back, and raise money for people who have to do that same physical act actually every day to get clean water. And we just launched something called Hope for Dinner, where people eat rice and beans for a week as a family and kind of go through a little devotional. And we tried it in one church, and it raised $100,000 in one event. And we're like, what? Like, this is too easy, simple. It's not easy, it was hard, but it was a really simple idea of just eating rice and beans. And finding out that people really want to not just give money, but themselves, and enter in and experientially give. And so it started with one crazy idea of college students having too much pizza late at night, wanting to bike across the country. But as it started expanding, it's expanding into a meta idea of experiential giving, and how can we start seeing that happen in other people's lives. And it's funny, it got on like CNN and then the Weather Channel, and that's when you write home, is you're like, we made it to the Weather Channel? Yes! But those are some of the fun things, and people climbing Kilimanjaro, and all types of experiential giving events. And it kind of based off of this idea that people, when they hear a need, they say, I wish I could do something about that. And when you think of that phrase, that's the core of what a social entrepreneur is you see a problem, and you say, I wish I could do something about that. And here's what I'm here to do, is just to tell you, you will get beat up. Keep doing it. Your ideas will get beat up. Keep rolling with them. And they're going to start expanding. Keep running with those. And it comes back, my final little story before I leave is, I have a friend named Augustine who actually got to hang out with Mother Teresa for a little bit. And his buddy wanted to start an orphanage, and he told Mother Teresa, I want to start an orphanage. And she said, that's not how it works. And he goes, what? And she says, you take one kid in, you keep him in your home, and you care for him. And then if that works, you get 2. And if that works, you get 3. And then when your home's too small for the kids, then you start your orphanage. And I want to encourage all of you that want to start a huge, awesome organization, that's not how it works. Start working on that one core thing that you can do, and keep doing it until it takes an organization to make it happen, which is really hard because everyone wants cool logos and cool websites and all these things. But don't forget that the reason those are just mechanisms to make that one core thing. What's your one kid that you can help? And if you do that, man, the world needs you. The world needs you because it's the entrepreneur who's willing to get beat up and get their ideas beat up. They're the people who are creating the future and creating the common good. So that's my encouragement to all of you. And hopefully that was a little spark to keep you going there. Hang in there. So.